Hello, this is Dom
And
from Black Toad Studios, and I am joined with
Tom.
from Black Toad Studios. And today we've got another faction-focused Friday, and today we are covering the Tyranids, the Great Devourer.
Mm.
So myself and Tom, we've got limited knowledge on Tyranids, but we've done a lot of research,
Have we?
and yes, well, I have. We'll find out. And we're going to go in basically a bit about the lore and the background of Tyranids, how they perform on tabletops, the models that are available, and how you can get started in the army.
Hmm.
So, Tom, let's
Yeah.
start with you. Have you ever played Tyranids?
As in myself? No, never.
Have you played against Tyranids?
Yes, I have actually. For once, I can actually answer yes to this question.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
And what's your experience then of playing against them? Have you enjoyed playing against Tyranids?
I have found them a breath of fresh air to play against, actually, because obviously, as you well know, in our particular gaming area, there's not a lot of Tyranids, I might add. I think we
Mm-hmm.
know maybe a couple of people with them.
There's a few Tyranid players we know.
Yeah.
Yep.
I do remember one very fond memory is that we had an Apocalypse game with Tyranids, if you remember.
We did have an
We did.
apocalypse
We had
game.
quite a large one with one of our friends who
Yep.
had an entire Tyranid army himself, which was pretty cool.
Chaos versus Tyranids.
Chaos vs Tyranid, that was a pretty good matchup. We had the old, what was it? What was the big thing he had?
The Bio Titan.
Biotitan, that's the one.
The Hierophant Bio
Hierophant,
Titan.
that was awesome.
We'll go into that
And
later.
yes, and obviously lots of swarms.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, but yeah,
Very
that's
cool.
so that's one of the things I remember quite keenly about it was it's also just it's a bit different to what I'd normally play against because I haven't really
Hmm.
played against Tyranids a lot. But when I do, I always enjoy the game because it's a little bit different.
Yeah, so the main thing to take away from playing against Tyranids that you don't get against necessarily most other armies, with the exception of demons, is that you don't have any real tanks as such. You have
No.
carnifexes, you've got lots of big stuff. You've got Morlocks, you've got hive tyrants, you've got the shebang. Everything's big creatures or little creatures. So
Yeah.
you've got a real mix. It's not like a normal army that you'd expect on the tabletop
No.
compared to the others. It's very different. Myself, I played Tyranids for a little while when I was really when I was like second, third edition. It was fun. Although back then it was a lot of metal models, and I think to get the real Tyranid experience, you want to have swarms
Yeah, definitely.
of models. So unfortunately, it wasn't an army I was able really to push myself into too much. Playing against them, it pretty much is swarms
Yeah.
on the tabletop. You tend to get a couple of units that will kind of reoccur, like a flying hive tyrant you might see quite often. They're quite
Yeah, that's
beefy,
true.
quite nasty. You'll see some Trigons, some Tervagons, lots of Gaunts normally. I don't tend to see many Warriors. Maybe
No.
that's not what's flavour of the month at the moment. But Tyranids have got a pretty big model range, to be honest, haven't they?
Yeah, I think they've actually got quite a generous offering, and also a lot of their kits, if I recall, can be made up in two ways. I think as well.
Yeah, yeah. So
So
they've got a few options.
yeah,
And they have been around since second edition, so they're not necessarily a new army on the block.
no,
They've had a few incarnations, and a lot of models have been redone, which is a bit peculiar for some armies.
yeah. But I would also say the nice thing about Tyranids, if they ever want to change, advance them or make them, because of the way Tyranids work, they kind of can change to fit the needs.
Yes,
That's kind of
which we'll get into, won't
yeah,
we? Which I think will fit perfectly into Tom. Tyranids, eh? They're a bit weird.
yeah,
Let's talk about them.
yes.
What do we know about Tyranids in the background?
Well,
What are Tyranids?
well, interesting enough. So we probably could start kind of where they came from, and the interesting answer to that is no one really quite knows where they've come from.
Yeah.
The only explanation is they've come from beyond known space somewhere,
Yes.
and they haven't just come from one place either. They've come from
Yeah.
multiple directions around the galaxy as in its known space to the Imperium's point of view, which
Which
is
is quite scary, isn't it?
Mhm.
Really. If
So yeah. What I was going to say, it either means a couple of things. Number one, they've run out of things to eat in the other area,
Mhm.
or number two, they're running away from something.
Yeah, which is one of the themes. They may be like this massive, the Great Devourer,
Yeah,
as Tyranids are known, is running away from something, which would be quite a scary thought, really,
yeah.
because they are quite a massive threat in the 41st
Well,
millennium.
Yeah, I've been I've been heard they kind of like build as like the ultimate predators from a point of view of engineered biology kind of way.
Yeah.
It's very very interesting.
And they normally are launched into what's known as a hive fleet.
Mm.
So currently there's been 3 major hive fleets and a few splinter fleets from there. So Tom, can you name all 3? Don't look
Oh,
at whatever you're looking at.
Oh
Name
no,
3 hive fleets.
I can name Behemoth,
Yep.
Kraken,
Yep.
and the last one escapes me.
You look at your.
No, I haven't. I have. That's Leviathan. I actually haven't got them written down. In all seriousness.
So there's been 3 hive fleets. They say they're quite a recent addition, story-wise, to Warhammer. They appeared beginning of the 41st millennium, where a lot of the other races, as we know, have been around for a long time. And I think it started with Behemoth.
Yeah, Behemoth at the ocean world of Tyranny.
Which we'll also get into.
Going to just as a
just a little clip. So Behemoth, Kraken, and the most recent one is Leviathan, which we will get into as well a bit later on.
Yeah.
And so a hive fleet essentially it's like a massive living organism, isn't it?
It basically comprises of starfaring living ships.
Yes.
Which is an interesting way of looking, because technically they're all biological, but they survive in the cold vacuum of space. And each of these ships is capable of producing more little gribblies inside them, which so they typically serve the ship that they're on, but then that ship serves the fleet, the hive fleet, which is obviously comprises of everything that's inside that particular fleet's designation. So very much kind of one mind consciousness broken down into little bits as they go down.
So it's almost like organs, isn't it, within a body?
Yeah. They
all serve a purpose, and they'll go from there. So they're very good at adapting, aren't they? So if they turn up at a planet and they're so what's quite interesting actually, when Tyranids are turning up to a planet, they will have what's known as the shadow of
the warp. Yes.
Yeah. So that almost is like a blackout, isn't it? If you're an Imperial planet, for instance, your psychers won't be able to do anything, won't be able to warn anyone, won't be able to contact anyone because of the shadow of the warp. So it literally like blacks out.
Interesting though is that if they do try and do it while they're affected by the shadow of the warp, essentially their mind gets worse than just being affected by it. They actually feel like there's things from the hive mind scratching at their mind when they try and access the warp, which is quite it's quite interesting, because obviously the Tyranids in themselves are all basically synaptically aware in some way. That's kind of how they operate, and obviously communicate and all this kind of stuff, which makes them quite a threat in that particular realm of warpness or whatever, of psychic.
Yeah, so on the tabletop and in the story, Tyranids are able to perform pretty well on, I would say, all 3 levels of the shooting, assault, and psychic.
Very balanced, I think. If you put them next to each other, they can do a lot of jobs. But I wouldn't even say they particularly excelled at probably anything really. It's all very balanced.
It's very balanced. Yeah. I mean, rules wise, you can also kind of like go one way or another. If you really want to go psychic heavy, you've got the ability to go psychic heavy, and likewise down the other aspects.
Now, interesting. I do have an interesting thing here just to add on to the fleet aspect. Do you know they obviously don't travel through the warp?
Yeah, they don't travel through the warp, do they?
There's a ship called the Narval, I think that's correctly how I say it, which is one of the hive ships inside the fleet, and it manipulates essentially gravity fields to let them travel faster than the speed of light.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting thing of how the hive fleet would get around in comparison to, because obviously because they're psychically attuned, I don't think they want to go in the warp. Quite frankly, I don't think it would be very good.
Well, they wouldn't have any.
They wouldn't have any need
protection against demons. For
precisely.
starters.
Yeah, so it wouldn't really help them doing that. So they've obviously evolved to to move across the galaxy and space using normal means, which is quite interesting because it's I think it's one of the rare races that does that actually.
Yeah. A lot. Actually, to be fair, there's a few, but it's interesting. Yeah. It's like you said, you would expect them to use it. Other races, for instance, Tau, Necrons don't. But then again, they don't have any psychic abilities. Yeah. Unlike Tyranids, obviously, they've got some form of presence in the warp. Probably quite an intimidating one, even for demons, I'd imagine.
Oh yeah, quite. I mean, if it
presence.
repels it, technically that's pretty powerful for a
Yeah,
warp entity. You know, it must be quite difficult for them to deal with at the same time. So yeah.
exactly. And what happens to a Tyranid fleet as well is they tend to send like a vanguard force, don't they, to a planet to sometimes kind of like a scouting to do a little bit of recon, maybe how Tyranids would do recon.
Gene stealers.
Gene stealer cults,
Yep.
lictors. They've got all sorts that will go onto a planet first to kind of soften the defenses up before the Hive Fleet turns up. And sometimes it could be, months, could be years, it could be like a decade, depending how long it needs to be. And then the Hive Fleet obviously will turn up and start launching a horrible assault upon a planet.
Oddly enough, I do have a detail. Well, I've got an explanation of a planetary assimilation. If you'd like me to,
Tom,
quickly go through it.
Let's do it. This is our time. We're talking about Tyranids.
And obviously, I will be reading a little bit of this from something here because I no way in hell could remember all this. So this is from a source
educate
online.
us.
So on day 0, mycetic spores, I think I said that correctly, are dropped, which generally contain, this is the bit we were just talking about, lictors or gene stealers, and they will lead an infiltration led by a synapse creature to the reproduction of Tyranid creatures to begin. Now, obviously, this can be done in several ways. The gene stealers are quite good at injecting seeds into mortals and making them reproduce. Which
could be gene stealer cult,
which is quite a long term. That's kind of a long termer. However, in this particular scenario, on day 9, apparently, they're very specific here. I don't know how they know this. The Tyranids that have landed will have expanded about 200 kilometers from their drop point and will present a significant threat to the local forces. Obviously, because they're quite nasty. Then by day 13, they're going out to about 700 kilometers, and they begin infesting local water sources. Apparently, yes. And then a 2,000 kilometer radius by day 37. This is, I'm just going to read this one, a basilethic infestation to 5,000 kilometer radius.
That seems a bit of a jump.
It is, but I suppose if you think about the Tyranids, once they get going, they're a little bit.
Yeah, hopefully that'll come across as we go through this tonight.
Then on day 48, apparently Tyranid population growth skyrockets. There we go, with the population doubling approximately every 2.5 days. I mean that's pretty fair going. And then by day 50, the main Hive Fleet arrives. So this is before the main Hive Fleets arrived. I mean that's incredible. And they generally numbering around 1.5 billion.
Yeah.
Psychic contact with the planet is obviously cut off because of the shadow of the warp, as we were just talking about.
Yep.
And any attempts of escape are stopped because no one can actually leave the planet now.
Yeah.
And then the day after that, the primary consumption of biomass begins. So basically, the brood ships releasing their ripper swarms, the little things, cool little things, and they consume the remaining organic material, depositing them in reclamation pods and capillary towers, which they send to orbit. So this is obviously to fuel because basically the Tyranid Hive Fleet is constantly hungry for biomass.
As you said there, the ships have got to travel.
Yeah,
the ships are living organisms. They need fuel, and the fuel is going to be squishy people.
And then basically last 2 points here. Day 80, the Hive ships descend into the upper atmosphere and begin collecting all the stuff that the little ones have sort of gathered up for them, and basically the lack of oceans caused tectonic plate shifts, dramatically increasing volcanic activity. So if it wasn't bad enough, and then basically on day 100, the Imperial Navy arrive and find the world lifeless, and go, "What the hell happened here?"
Gosh,
I mean
that went badly wrong.
Yes, and that I think that sums up a Tyranid invade quite nicely, because it's kind of how that's how you see it. Obviously, if they haven't had any opposition, that's going to happen. There's no way a little defense force on a planet's going to be able to stand up to anything like that at all. Anyway, no way.
No.
It's just
no.
like.
I mean, it has happened before. I mean, obviously, if the Hive Fleet would tend to keep going almost in a straight line to a point.
Yeah.
But there'll be planets in the way that obviously can offer more defense than others, and some of them will have a little garrison. Others will have a regiment, Forge Worlds, Fortress Worlds, Chapter, Home Worlds. There's lots of different things. So
and obviously the weird thing is Tyranids are generally drawn by the most biomass. So typically, if they're drawn to things, it would be more where there's more population, because there'll be more things for them to eat or infect. both are
Yeah,
good for
who
Tyranids.
knows? Yeah, so Gene Silicult, obviously, an offshoot of Tyranids, which we may cover in the future. That's a faction of its own there, so we'll come back to that at some point.
That's fair enough. Yeah, cool.
So we've gone into a little bit about who Tyranids are. Like a Hive Fleet is quite an intimidating thing. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to go into our conflicts, Thomas.
Oh, okay.
And then we'll go into some models.
Well, conflicts-wise, I chose Devastation of Baal.
Very recent one.
Yeah. Obviously, this is involving Hive Fleet Leviathan.
Yep.
And they basically, they arrive at they're going towards the Blood Angels chapter planet. Ball, obviously, and the Blood Angels, they do have some pre-warning of this, obviously, because they're not stupid. They start calling back a lot of their successor chapters to help defend, their Primarch's planet, which is, obviously a lot of people are up for this. They kind of want to come and help this particular thing not happen, because obviously I think if they lost Ball, that would be quite devastating for the Sons of Sanguinius somehow.
Yeah, you don't want Sanguinius getting eaten by a Hive Fleet, do you?
Now, however, this was very much timed along with a certain other event that happened, which was the Warp Rift.
Oh no!
Happened to essentially open up at this particular time, and essentially, obviously, Leviathan was absolutely pounding Ball and the Moon on it and all this kind of stuff. And they were not doing, obviously they were probably struggling to fight off this huge Hive Fleet. And ironically, the other great enemy of them, Chaos, happened to turn up from the Warp Rift. Land on the Moon, I'll just double check that, in the Empiric Storms, and essentially wiped out a huge portion of the Hive Fleet, which is like, what the hell, It's they've come in and they were led by a chap called, is it Carbahanda or Carbanda?
Yeah. He was. I believe he's the one that has fought against Sanguinius.
Yes. He likes skulls, by the way.
Who doesn't like skulls and corns?
Because he happened to make a massive pile of them in the shape of the Dread Sigil. With a lot of skulls. Yeah. And obviously he basically slaughtered the entire Tyranid host on Ball Prime as well, and piled their skulls in a big shape. And then essentially, as the warp kind of settled down a bit, I believe Mr. Gilliman turned up to assist in the kind of extermination of the isolated Tyranid ground forces after obviously the fleets had to sort of back off a bit because they got pretty much pounded by Blood Angels / successor chapters / demons. I mean, to be honest, I think the fact that the Warp Rift happened at that time probably saved Ball, I reckon. I think from what I read about it, they were really struggling to hold off this attack.
The whole Hive Fleet.
Exactly, you say 1.5 billion, as we said in the other one, is quite a. But it did actually apparently almost cost the entire Blood Angels chapter.
Well, I mean, a Hive Fleet that's quite, we're saying a little bit about Synapse. So they essentially work as one.
Yes.
You've got loads of organisms that will essentially work as one as long as the Synapse is maintained. They'll follow the orders of the Hive Tyrant or other high Synapse creatures. But once Synapse is gone, they kind of go back to their basic
instincts. Their basic instincts.
Yeah,
so it's
either
kill, survive, eat, whatever.
Eat,
it's pretty much a pretty standard set of fare for a creature.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool how they operate, because obviously, as you're saying, certain creatures have that kind of the psychic awareness to control, and they relay this stuff up to the fleet and back down. But obviously, when they're cut off, it turns them into raving lunatics, or very well, I don't know if they ever become docile. Maybe they do.
Sometimes they lurk, don't they? It's one of the rules they used to have. They just
lurk. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
so they don't necessarily do much. Just chill out.
Yeah.
Right. So,
what was your conflict, Dom?
Well, I'm going to pick the very first conflict recorded.
Oh, okay.
By the Imperium. So we're going back to the beginning of the 41st millennium. We're going to a planet that was called Tyranny Primus, an ocean world. Now, this is part of Hive Fleet Behemoth. It arrived on the eastern outskirts of the galaxy, and for a good few years, essentially the Hive Fleet was replenishing itself, slowly building, going to planets that weren't necessarily inhabited by any intelligent life forms. They just sucked them dry. Like everything goes. Like the microbes will go on the planet, vegetation, plant life, everything. It turns into basically a barren rock. To
sucking oceans up with a straw.
Yeah,
with a filter, get all the plankton out.
Yeah, everything's gone. And at this point, no one had really encountered Tyranids whatsoever. They might have encountered gene stealers, possibly, but not really thought as part of a bigger picture. Maybe it's like on a strand or something, and then we're just going to shoot them or whatever. And then, so for a long time, I think quite a few years, they just kind of hang around the outskirts, picking off these little planets. No one really noticed them, although I'm pretty sure you would if you looked at it through a telescope and you see it like.
What's that?
It's gone back. So they then came across the world of Tyranny Primus, which had a garrison of Astra Militarum, or the Guard. They also had a pretty hefty AdMech force, and it was quite well protected for an ocean world. It had defense lasers, it had bastions, it had its own fleet in orbit, and had fighters, had bombers, the whole shebang. Like if any other force came across this planet, you'd think twice about it. You'd be like, it seems a little bit hard going. I might not want to.
Terror Light.
Yeah, so it was Terror Light, Wikipedia maybe, and it was run by a Majos called Varnock. And basically what happened is the Hive Fleet turned up. Varnock went, I don't know what these guys are. Open fire, and they fired these. I think it was like 3 or 4 defense lasers, and they just like into space. They then had the Imperial Navy up there going, and gradually over like the course of I think a couple of hours, the defense laser barrels were starting to glow white through heat. The Tyranids had taken heavy casualties at this point, and the Imperial Navy were just hammering them. And then suddenly, the Tyranids just withdrew, and everyone was like, we did it! We've been shooting him down. We've been giving him hell, filthy Xeno scum." And Varnock, well, great. We've done really well here because of me. I tell you what, in my Imperial Navy that is in orbit at the moment, which is really contributing to the defense of this planet, go and harass those Hive Fleet's ships that are just scooting off. There's a fair few, but I think probably a fair match for the Imperial Navy. So they go in pursuit, keep following these Tyranid ships. They keep going, out of range now with the defense lasers. And then there's like this big like spore cloud in space. And they're like, right, let's just go through. And as they go through, they see thousands of Tyranid ships. And at this point, the Tyranid ships that were fleeing just stopped and turned around and came back. So they'd lured the Imperial Navy defenders that, at this point, as far as we know, Tyranids had never encountered the Imperium or any other intelligent race within the universe.
Predator instincts, Dom. Straight
away. And like sharks, they descended on the Imperial ships. And there was a pretty massive fight. The Imperial Navy did the best they possibly could after, taking all these ships and suddenly descended upon, shooting everywhere, left, right, and centre. Flurry of targets. And gradually the ships started to go down. And so the Sword of the Warrior, the last ship standing, was able to send some form of message back to Varnock to warn him of the impending destruction. And then obviously, beep, nothing else. Flatline. So Tyranids basically destroyed the fleet, straight away started to extract biomatter. They don't sit around.
No.
There's
some ships there, can opener.
Yeah, they've got all the minerals there. They can do what they want. And they've got all the squishy people inside they can eat. And obviously, like the fuel, I don't know, maybe they have fuel as well. Who knows?
In terms of its biofuel, Dom, I don't think it was.
I know. So then the Tyranids arrive back. So now at this point, the Tyranids, from the small amount of ships they had before, it's changed. It's thousands of ships now. The sky has gone black. There's no, if you're a guardsman looking up, you're playing with the safety switch of your las gun, and you're thinking, maybe I'm not going to do very well here. Spoiler alert, it's not going to go particularly well. But the Tyranids then descend on the planet. They're dropping pods down, full of Steelers, full of Gaunts, all sorts coming down. As I said, it's an ocean world, so the majority of these pods and the Tyranid forces are landing in the ocean. So the Tyranids are in the ocean, and the ocean is full of, let's say, sharks. It's full of creatures. Some creatures are happy to see them, maybe. Some people, but the Tyranids basically devour everything in the ocean. They are eating everything left, right, and centre. There's probably easy pickings for them. Sharks aren't coordinated. They can't do anything about this. And so they start devouring everything. And gradually, the Tyranid forces, using the hive mind, get their attack force together. And they start heading towards essentially the main island complex where the Imperial forces are. And around this complex, it's high walls from the ocean. And they start coming through. And at this point, we see that the Astra Militarum, or the Guard, actually are elements of the Kazachan jungle fighters. They're veterans. Probably at this point thinking they've been seconded to a nice, easy spot away from the front line. But these are veteran guardsmen. These are trained. These are battle hardened. They know what they're doing.
No death world here.
They're up on their bastions. They're up on the walls. They're in their trenches. And they are laying down some serious fire upon these Tyranids that are coming in. They've also got support from Thunderbolt fighters that are going past. They've got Admex Qatari forces aiding them. And the Tyranids are taking ridiculous casualties once again. They're taking thousands of Gaunts are falling here. Gaunts are dying. Gene Stealers here are dying. And still during all of this, defense lasers are still hammering up at the Hive Fleet. They're doing the best they can. It's shooting fish in a barrel here. They can't miss. Wherever they're firing, they can't miss. But gradually, Tyranids are just constantly putting more reinforcements on this planet. They're adapting, and Tyranid forces start taking on the different bastions, taking on the defense lasers. And one by one, these defense lasers and bastions and trench lines and fortifications are slowly getting silenced. They're kind of like, no, we can't hold it. We've got to fall back. And gradually it's getting smaller and smaller. So eventually the surviving forces are all falling back to the command bunker where Major Varnuk is lurking. And so they're all in their bunker complex, the command bunker complex. They've got the gates up, and they're hearing hammering from the outside where the Tyranids.
Knock, knock.
As you said, they start off with Gaunts, they start off with gargoyles and geniuses, and slowly you start seeing like the likes of Carnifexes turning up. And like Trigons and Tervagons and all sorts. They all start turning up, and eventually they bash down the gate. And the guard forces are pretty ragtag at this point. They're down to bayonets, flamers, anything they got to try and hold back this Tyranid fleet. And as we mentioned earlier, you've got the Shadow of the Warp, which prevents calling for any reinforcements outside the planet. And Varnuk is probably the best decision he's made out of all this conflict, is that he assimilates all the data that has been recorded during this whole conflict, like video, pictures, data from the ships, data from the defenses, data from the Qatari troops, and collects them all together. He then puts them into this little pod and descends it 3,000 meters under the surface to essentially was...
It's like a time capsule.
Yeah, time capsule. Once he's done that, he then straight away goes self-destruct and blows up the whole facility, the whole Imperial facility on that planet. Massive crater. And so, essentially, that is all you know for now. Now, a year later, there is a force led by Inquisitor Cryptman, who discovers the planet. Like, obviously, it's all recorded on Imperial records. What kind of planet it is? Ocean planet. Got an Imperial bastion on there. Got bastion fortress complex on there. It's got an Imperial navy. Turns up in orbit, finds some acid-drenched Iron Hulks floating around in orbit. Like, well, that's not right. Looks at the planet. There's no water down there. There's a massive crater where the Imperial facility once was, but essentially there's nothing. Luckily, though, for the Imperium, Krypton finds Varnuk's capsule and is able to record and retrieve all the data from it. He then goes back to the Imperium and warns the Imperium. So it's a quote.
Oh, he's got a quote
from Krypton. So it goes, an alien threat has risen from beyond the abyss, a swarm so vast that it blots out the stars. This horror fights neither for power nor territory, but rather to feed a hunger so insatiable that it will eventually devour the entire galaxy. And that is the first encounter of the Tyranids by the Imperium, and possibly by any race within the 40k universe. And
yeah, cool.
I thought that was a very cool story.
It's very cool.
Kind of you kind of see what Tyranids all about.
Yeah. It sums up what they're sort of how they operate.
Yeah, because definitely, like going back to the Hive Fleet in orbit, you kind of think that it's actually quite nasty, because the Imperial Navy are all seeing these massive ships and massive guns, but they're pretty quite slow in a lot of ways, and they're relying on all these individual people doing their parts, and yet a bioship is just probably one massive organism,
and it's perfectly in tune with everyone else in
it. Itself. Yeah, exactly, and it's quite nasty. And when it fires like a torpedo, that torpedo is going to be full of gene sealers. So yeah, pretty nasty stuff. I quite like that story.
That's cool. Yeah.
Right, so shall we go into a little bit about models?
Yeah, sure.
What do you want to go first? Games Workshop? Or
let's do games. Let's do Games Workshop first.
Yep.
Would you like to do your one first, Tom?
Yeah. So I have picked the Turbogon.
Let me just. I am just going to sort you out, my friend. I believe we have a Oh, turn it on. There we go. We have a Turbogon there. I know. Technically, Dom can't see this, by the way, but he's hopefully looking at a similar picture.
That I can see it. So the Turbogon, I really like this model for a couple of reasons. One, you see lots of them. Well, I have seen lots of them over my years of playing against Tyranids.
That's a fair assessment.
Because essentially what it does is a big mama that spawns little baby gaunts. And it's they're pretty tough still, I think. They're not easy. You'd think, oh yeah, it's quite easy, but you have got to concentrate far.
I mean, obviously, I think the only thing that's slightly against them is obviously they can be targeted. So, yes. And typically because they can respawn things, they tend to get targeted as well, I believe.
Yeah, definitely. So, I think they're a lot more powerful in 7th edition than they were in 8th.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But they are very cool models, very different, because that's like what I said earlier in the video. Tyranids are very different to other races, although. You got Team Spiders for Necrons, maybe, which would be the closest equivalent, because it spawns more gaunts, and it's there to kind of. It's a psyker as well, I believe. So it's a
synapse creature, isn't it, as well?
So so it's got a lot of good stuff going for it. When it dies, though, it lets out like a
psychic scream, I think, or something like that.
Yeah, and then it essentially kills gaunts around it. But it's a very cool model. I really like it.
It's definitely one of their. It's one of their nicer ones, definitely. I think.
Yeah.
Because it's very, especially the egg sacs underneath. It's quite cool that it just looks a bit more like a kind of a troop carrier, really.
Yeah, and I think it was one like the aesthetics there are definitely one of the earlier ones for this whole range, and I think a lot of the other models have kind of looked at this and kind of adapted slightly, but it's a good base, I think, the Turbogon, and it's like I'm just looking at the Games Workshop price for it. It's not that bad, in all honesty. I would probably have a couple if I was to collect Tyranids.
Yeah,
cool. But yeah, Turbogon, it's cool. What about you, Tom? What's your Games Workshop model?
I went with. Let me just find this for. Just got to bring it up.
Don't say the Biovore.
No. There we go. We have Trigon.
Oh yeah, Trigon's cool.
Yes.
Why did you pick the Trigon?
Well, number one, this is very based on looks, I will add. I love the look of that model. I just think it's such a, it's obviously it's got its tail. Doesn't technically have kind of, I suppose that all its limbs are up on its upper body technically because it stands
Hmm.
up on its tail. It's got a lot of nice claws on it, but also I just love the mouth with the two little mandibles that are sort of
Yeah,
Um,
yum, yum, yum. Jump in my
and
tummy.
if I recall correctly, is there I might get this wrong. Is a Morlock version of this as well, or is that a
Yeah,
slightly?
Morlock's the other build.
Is the other build of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I can't remember if both tunnel. I'm trying to remember.
They do. I think the
Yes.
Trigon is a synapse creature, and the
Yes.
Morlock
Morlock
isn't.
isn't. That's correct. So yeah, and but the idea of these, I love the fact that these can tunnel and come up underneath things. I think that's
Yeah,
really such a cool. It does also simulate that Tyranids definitely own the air, the land, and the underground.
yeah. They've got
Quite
all. They've
frankly, they,
got things everywhere.
they've got it covered. But I mean, ultimately, that model, if I was to collect Tyranids, I would definitely have a couple of these because I just love the look of them. I mean, they'll be I can tell just by looking at it, it'll be awful hard to paint because just the amount of lines on it and the little bits of carapace all over this one are just going to be quite a, and also a nice little tail there as well, some sort of a little
Yeah,
barb on the end of
yeah,
it.
yeah. You kind of think of
Um,
like maybe like a rattlesnake or something, just
yeah,
like
yeah. And,
shaking it a bit.
and I think so imagine like three of them popping out the ground and sort of like, oh, uh-oh.
Yeah, it's quite like when like I know we both have encountered these over our time. They're quite intimidating models. They're quite big,
Mm,
aren't they? They're
yes.
very deceiving. Like you look at a picture on the website, and you go, "Oh, it can't be that big." But when it's popping up next to a squad of
When you get
infantry,
a comparison on it, yeah,
ooh,
it's
God, yeah, they're pretty terrifying.
yes,
Especially if you've got more than one popping up, coming in the backfield. They're pretty horrible.
no,
You've got to
definitely.
concentrate your fire a bit on them.
Yeah, you don't want them sort of running around too much.
Mm. Oh no, definitely. Yeah, it's very unique silhouette as well. If you look at it,
Yeah.
it's you can't be mistaken what that is.
No, no,
It's scary coming
that's
up,
one of the
and
things I love about it as well. It's very obvious what that model
yeah,
is. So,
yeah, the whole range of Tyranids is very unique, isn't it?
mm.
Right, shall we do Forge World?
Yeah, would you like to do your one first? Okay,
Yeah.
I have. Oh, there it goes. Bang!
Oh my goodness! It's a Bio Titan.
It
It's going to
just
be the Hierophant Bio Titan.
yes,
It is. Um,
it's awesome.
it is awesome.
Yeah.
What? Once again, like you said earlier, we played against our friend who's got one of these, and they are very cool models
Yeah.
and very unique as well. They definitely stick out from
Well,
against other Titans.
I would say they own the battlefield they sit on as well, because literally they straddle multiple
Yeah, yeah,
bits
yeah.
of
They're pretty
terrain.
huge, aren't they? And I love it. I think it's brilliant. It's once again Games Workshop or Forge World in this case doing a great job in bringing to life what I believe Tyranids are all about. And this thing is just intimidating. You can just see it like lurching across the battlefield, probably trying to pin a Titan
But
down.
also, you can imagine like hordes of Hormagaunts and Termagants swarming around its legs and underneath
Yeah,
it as it runs forward, and it's sort of stepping through it because even though it's a big thing, the legs again are quite pointed, so it
yeah.
can move around
Yeah,
swarms of
yeah,
stuff.
definitely. I
Just
think
got
Forge World have got some really nice models actually
yeah,
for Tyranids. I don't know necessarily like all of them are particularly top notch rules wise, but I think the models themselves are very unique,
hmm.
and I think Tyranid models are lovely in Forge World, and that's why I picked it. It's because it's unique. It's a Titan. Not every race has a Titan, and they could have easily just said, "No, Tyranids, you haven't got a Titan," but they went. I tell you what, let's sculpt one.
Too right. That's definitely you should do that. Yeah. All
Yeah.
right.
So there you go. That's my one. What did you pick, Tom?
I picked. I was going to pop it up here. The Harridan. The big
Oh, is that the
flying.
flying one?
Yes, the big flying one.
Yeah. Oh
I
man.
love the look of this model. Down all the way from the mouth, which looks very like aliens esque.
Yeah.
The big, the massive, long extended bottom jaw, teeth coming at it just out of there. But the fact it's a fly, and obviously this picture I think is, as you said earlier, is quite deceptive because this thing is huge, if
Yes.
I remember correctly.
Oh yes. Yeah.
I mean, you can tell by the base. It's quite a chunky base with a
It's all
really
about the base.
very sturdy stand for it. But it's just and also I think it's got guns in the wing bones as well, from what I understand. So
Yeah.
I haven't actually played against one of
Does
these,
it
but
transport things? I think it might transport
I think
gargoyles.
gargoyles. I think it is. Yeah, I think you're
Yeah.
right. It's like a gargoyle holder.
It's like looking at it now. It's such an interesting design
Yeah.
because it's very much. It looks like a dragon. in some ways. Like the body, in my opinion, looks like a scaled dragon.
Yeah.
From the side profile, and also it just looks like something like Godzilla.
Yeah,
You can imagine that just
if you put it upright, with the neck
it's
curving over.
huge.
But I love how it's also got the armor plating up the neck, so it's got like protection
Yeah.
and engineered protection in its thing, and the eyes are sort of just covered in hood. It's really cool. Yeah.
You wouldn't want to be flying your Valkyrie and looking in the mirror and seeing that behind you, would you?
I mean, I don't think you'd see it in the mirror if it was that close. It would just be like, why is there a shadow over my Valkyrie? It was sunlight a minute ago, and now it's suddenly. Is it raining?
Yeah.
No, that's gargoyles. Where are they coming from? Oh no.
Yeah. Oh man, that is such a cool model.
Yeah.
I haven't played against one before, but I've seen it, and I really want to play against one.
I'm actually getting
our friends again.
Getting tempted to start Tyranids, Tom. This is bad.
That's the problem with doing these videos, Tom.
I know. It hooks you a little bit in your brain. You start thinking, well, if I was to do these, I think I would do this. I'm just like, but the thing is, I only really want the big ones. I just fancy a couple of large,
super heavy detachments.
Super heavy detachments done. I've got my 7,000 points of Tyranids.
Why wouldn't you?
Dedicated collector myself.
Yeah, exactly. So Forge World and Games Workshop have got some really nice models.
I'm just going to drop that picture off. There we go. So,
right. So we're now on to characters, and Tyranids, as you can imagine, when it's not necessarily about the individual, don't have many characters.
No, it doesn't suit their race really, because
I know of 3 characters, but obviously we've picked 2.
What was the third one out of interest? One we're not doing.
It's the Doom of something.
Oh, Doom Malantai.
Yeah, that's it.
Ah.
We haven't picked that one.
We haven't picked that one. No.
If you're interested, go check it out.
But now you say it, no, you mentioned.
It's not a model anymore. There's definitely some lore on.
Well, I thought it was a spore, wasn't it? Oh no, it's a zoanthrope, isn't it?
Like a zoanthrope.
Yes, that's it. Yeah. Okay, cool.
So, do you want to do your one first, or do you want me to do mine?
I'll have a crack at mine if you want, because mine's not too. I think your one. I don't know if yours is a slightly longer story or not. Mine's sort of quite basic in its way, but it's quite a cool one.
Well, go for it, Tom.
So basically, mine's about Old One Eye, which you may or may not have heard about.
Also, actually, before we go into this too much, Tyranid, Games Workshop, when you've created these characters, you have given them very dodgy names.
Yes. Is that for the adult-minded about us, Dom? Yeah?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to.
We're watching you.
We're watching you with the one eye. Sorry. Okay, I'm going to move on.
Go for it. Sorry.
Sorry. So Old One Eye is a Carnifex, for starters. Now he was very involved in Hive Behemoth's attack on Calth to start with. He turned up on their thing, and he was I think he was a bigger than normal Carnifex from what I understand anyway. And he was literally he was smashing through tanks, sort of ripping up the guard, rampaging entire squadrons, and all this kind of just literally tearing through defences. And there's the weird thing is I was looking this up and I was trying to work out who slayed him, and it just says a forgotten hero. I mean, I don't know how he was forgotten with the name of someone who basically shot this Carnifex through the eye with a plasma pistol. Now, I don't know how close you have to be to do that. I imagine you have to be reasonably close. So, and I guess the body fell on him, and he maybe got assimilated, and no one knew who he was. That's fair enough. Anyway, the shot went through his eye socket into his brain, and essentially killed him. Not quite. Essentially, he was obviously killed, and during this, killed as much as everyone thought he was dead. However, solar decades later, there was a band. This is after the fleet had kind of been driven from Calth. I don't think they were completely gone, but they were sort of pushed away from Calth. And essentially, a band of smugglers came down and found what they thought was just a very valuable artifact in the ice. It was either, to them it probably looked like a dinosaur find or something like that. I'd imagine that's the best way I can kind of think about it. So they dug it up and they stuck it in their ship, ready to sort of take it for a bounty.
Yeah.
However, a few
days, a bit like Rhino Horn.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus.
Grind him down.
Grind them down, and they're just giving it out to their mates. Oh, try some of this. It really
Yeah,
it
try some of
helps.
this. It's really
It
good for
helps.
you.
Yeah. But we're resorting to this now. I mean, this is our version of padding.
Yeah.
Anyway, his wounds started to heal, but they didn't know this. And while this is sort of going on in the background, they're sort of going about their smuggler-esque business. And meanwhile, old One Eye, as we're going to call him obviously now, is regenerating. And eventually he regenerates himself, and obviously, because there's no hive mind to control him, he basically descends into his normal instinct. And his normal instinct is to basically to kill whatever's around him, destroy it. And obviously he was quite a nasty beast to start with. Now he's on his own, frightened. No, probably not frightened. Scared.
I like the way you kind of put a bit of sympathy
Yeah.
towards old One Eye. He's scared. He's not got his family around him.
Yeah, doesn't know what to do.
And all these people with cattle prods.
Yeah, and so he thinks, I know, I'm going to hijack this ship. Just with his claws. No, I'm joking. Oh, that's not part of the story. That'd be brilliant though. Just imagine him in the cockpit, sort of like, why is it not working? No, anyway, he slaughters all the smugglers, obviously. That's actually what happens. He then starts to wander the planet, sort of just taking on land convoys every now and then to sort of just go missing. He's just like, bang, 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 all over the place. And obviously, there's basically, they haven't quite got rid of all the infestation on the planet yet. They thought they had, but there's actually still some Tyranids sort of lingering around.
Yeah.
So actually, what happens is they get drawn to him, even though he's not technically a Synapse creature. I think just there's something about him.
Yeah.
The other creatures like Termagants, Gene Stealers, anyone that's left sort of turn up because he's the dominant leader. Basically, I think that's they kind of a pack instinct, I suppose, when they sort of yeah.
Yeah, he's kind of from what you said so far, he sounds like he's a bit like Stompy from Simpsons when Bart gets an elephant.
Okay, yeah.
But,
but he's got claws for feet.
yeah, it needs people.
Yeah. However, there's also one other chap that gets drawn to this particular thing, and it's actually Scout Sergeant Tellian.
Cool.
Yeah, so he tracks him, and he's trying to kill him, but he's finding it a real tough time because apparently his armoured hide is like properly. Yeah, it's properly tough to actually go through. And he made a 1 in a million shot into his already ruined eye socket that hasn't regenerated again. And he was basically overcome, and he essentially, but he fell into a ravine. I know it's like you
can write this.
No, you can't. It's just like, oh, there's a ravine.
Where would I shoot him? By this ravine.
By this ravine, so I can't recover the body and prove that I killed him.
Yeah.
Actually, what happened? Tellian didn't shoot him. He's lying. He just
Oh, well, I just fell into a ravine.
He just fell into a ravine running away because he was so scared.
Yeah, the shot lined up. And
not Tellian! Run! An ultramarine. But anyway, he fell down the ravine and they couldn't find his body. So obviously he's not dead. And essentially the eventual fate of him on that planet is they don't know where he is. And from what I'm just reading a couple of notes here after this point, obviously his ability is that he can heal pretty much any damage from any source. To the point of even where he looks like he's just maybe even bone. He just regenerates. Yeah. Obviously, the only thing that stopped him last time was obviously being packed in ice. So that maybe the next time someone kills him, maybe sort of ice bucket, big ice bucket, obviously, or something like that. And essentially, there's also a Gene Stealer cult known as the Behemoth Undercult, which worships Old One Eye alongside its Gene Stealer's patriarch as a kind of a totemic kind of shamanist, which is quite interesting. And obviously he's still part of Behemoth, I suppose, technically, but not near them. So until they kind of regenerate, he comes back into the. I wouldn't be surprised if he evolves into being his own little thing.
I don't know. The thing is, Tom, with a Tyranid Hive Fleet, the reason they don't have characters is essentially because what happens is once a planet is conquered by the Hive Fleet, they all just step inside a big pool of acid and die. The Tyranids will all go, oh, we've won. I'll tell you what, how to celebrate a victory.
Turn myself into biomass.
Let's just go in that giant acid pool and turn ourselves into biomass. So maybe for One Eye, it might be a good idea. He never goes back to the Hive Fleet, and he just keeps.
Keeps himself. Yeah, it's a nice story, isn't it? It's one of it's quite a nice one for 40k universe. A little kind of something that's out there, which is a bit interesting, especially for an army. Sorry, a faction of stuff that doesn't really have that characterful Normality from other faction. Other factions. Excuse me. Now I did look up his rules as well quickly, just to sort of add a bit of rules flavour to this.
Okay.
Obviously, he's a Carnifex, so from that point of view, he's kind of quite standard in that way. He is also classed as a character with 10 wounds, which I think he means. No, is it? It has to be
under 9.
Yeah, so that's a shame.
Under, isn't it? I think,
Basically, he's got an alpha leader rule, which basically means that any Carnifexes within 6 inches can re-roll one. So add 1 to hit rolls in the fight phase, which is quite nice.
Mm-hmm.
So he's also the immortal battering ram, which basically means when he finishes a charge move on a 4+, one enemy unit within 1 inch suffers D3 mortal wounds. I think that sounds a bit lackluster personally, but
yeah,
I'm
think
not.
A lot of these rules are.
Yeah, I mean that's what I'm saying. And also like Berserk Rampage. So each time you make a successful hit for Old One Eye, you can immediately make 1 additional attack. I mean that's quite nice because obviously he does get 5 attacks. So technically, if you hit with all 5, you get yourself another 5.
Yeah.
So and he's
exactly.
And he is hitting. Although weirdly, he's only hitting on 3s. So,
yeah.
Which is a shame. And the only thing that I think is actually one thing which I think is a really bad rule for him is his Regeneration Rule. So at the beginning of each of his turns, he regains 1 wound. Now, considering what we just said about him and the fact that he can be targeted, I think that's really poor.
Yeah.
I think they should have something in there where maybe he doesn't regenerate, but maybe he can only lose a maximum of 2 or 3 wounds a turn.
Well, that could be part of the.
Could be part of the updates. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. You never know. But other than that, yeah, he's okay. I think I could see why people wouldn't maybe include him in a list too often because he's a bit. I suppose if you ran a load of Carnifexes, it might be quite fun to sort of have him as the front of them. But everyone's going to kill him first, aren't they? Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Anything that buffs another character.
You get to target him, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, which is a shame, but I think he, again, it's sometimes you get character rules, for you you think, oh, this is a bit lackluster for what you've read in the fluff, which I think that is. I think they could maybe take away a couple of the really bad ones from that thing, and then make maybe 2 of them a lot better, the rules wise. Make the regeneration 3 wounds a turn or something. If you can survive.
Yeah.
Anyway,
yeah, exactly.
I digress. It's on to your one, Dom.
So I have gone with the Red Terror from High Fleet Kraken. So there is a model available on Games Workshop. He looks a little bit dated now, unfortunately. But after reading a bit of background on him, I would be tempted just to get him for like narrative games. I think it'd be quite cool. So the Red Terror is of the Ravener strain. He appeared a couple of years before High Fleet Kraken turned up.
Okay.
So he just suddenly appeared. He wasn't left behind. Obviously, Old One Eye was left behind because he fell in an iceberg. But the Red Terror just suddenly appeared. So he appeared on the mining world of Vevlin Primus, and he caused a bit of terror. So he essentially appeared on this mining planet. He one day decided that he is going to go into the Imperial Starport compound. So bursts through the wall, kills 24 Imperial citizens.
A specific number.
24, it's quite a lot. But eventually he's kind of fought, they beat him back. They go, get away, stop killing all our men. And he flees. So over the course of the next 20-ish days, he suddenly appears again. He attacks them and he disappears again. And this keeps going. And there's not a great population on this planet, so like to lose 24 people in the first attack is pretty brutal. But he keeps doing his hit and run attacks and keeps killing more people, disappearing, and the Imperial defenders are like, right, we've got to deal with him. He's getting a little bit cheeky. We don't know what this guy is.
A bit cheeky.
He's all by himself.
He's being a little Herbert.
There's only one of them. So they send out these hunting parties to go after the Red Terror. And Tom, do you know what happened to these hunting parties?
I suspect they didn't come back.
Correct.
Yeah.
They so they kept sending these guys out. No one ever came back.
So the registrar there sort of saying, yeah, they're out there somewhere. Just Don't worry about them. Your families. Here's some reparations for you.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
They decided to have a new life hunting.
Yeah,
It was much more
so
fun.
so over the course of 20 days, essentially he's just been hit and run attacks. He's causing absolute mayhem on this planet by himself. Like I say, it's not a big populated planet. It's just a starport and a few people, miners, people manning starport. Probably a few garrison kind of PDF troops, maybe. Not even that, maybe some Arbites.
Probably not brilliant ones.
Not great ones.
No.
I mean, they haven't killed one Tyranid.
No.
I mean, they're not essentially the best guys in the they're not top game, are they?
No.
So the survivors of this, because he just said it's just suddenly like stops. There's no rhyme or reason behind it. There's rumours saying this guy, this Tyranid or this creature was huge. Others saying he was pretty big, but he wasn't huge. But he was able to swallow people whole. And in the rules, there is a rule where he can swallow people whole, which is pretty cool. If he hits with all 4 attacks, he does a roll over the wound of the model, and instead of doing damage, the model's in dead. So it's quite cool. I like him. And a bit like Old One Eye, he can buff Raveners around him. So anyway, I digress. We go back to the planet. No attacks for ages. But people have had enough of this. So people are leaving the planet. And one of these mining ships that leaves the planet's got loads of refugees on there. And they're all leaving the planet. They're like, we've had enough of this. Why are we out here? This is horrible. Everyone's dying.
Yes. Let's all go onto one ship together.
Let's all go on this big ship and go to Adris Hope. Adris Hope is another planet, a bit more populated. And they go on the ship. I don't know how long it would take. Probably a few days, a week maybe, to get to this planet. Maybe longer, I don't know. Not really one for traveling in between stars.
Too long, probably.
Anyway, they go off, and no one hears anything from this mining ship. They know where it's going, and then suddenly the ship appears. Try and communicate with it. Nothing. Try repeatedly to hail it, fly past it to get someone's attention. Nothing. And then the ship slowly settles down, lands in an automated fashion, away from any habitable areas. Still no communication. So the people at Adris Hope send out a small force of people to investigate and go, look, what's going on? You're meant to be sending us codes to land and stuff, and you've done nothing. Get to the ship, Tom.
Well,
everybody's dead.
Really? I mean, I think the first mistake of Adris Hope was not blasting out of the air when they got no codes.
Yeah, they're all dead, Tom.
Yeah.
No survivors. Allegedly, it's up to 1,000 people were on that ship, and they're all dead. It's like an abattoir.
There's nothing worse than being stuck in a ship with a Ravener.
Yeah.
And no way out.
and at this point, there's no sign on the ship of the Red Terror. And so Adris Hope obviously report this. That was it until a couple of weeks later.
He just goes on a little break, doesn't he? He's just like, I've had enough this week.
Real estate on Adris Hope, the price went from up here to down here.
I can see that.
And do you know why that was, Tom?
I imagine it was due to wildlife issues.
Yeah, everyone was dead.
Yeah. Estate agent.
The Red Terror, he's just awesome. He's such a thing out of horror films.
It's very Alien-esque, actually. As in, the original Alien, obviously, with the one.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that.
Because I mean, you look at him stat wise and what his points is in game, and you think he's not really that bad, to be honest. But you kind of think, this background story. He's not going against Marines.
No.
He's not going against a regiment of elite scions or anything like that. He is essentially going against women and children.
Yeah, he's doesn't like a fair fight by the sounds of it.
No, he doesn't. No, he just likes killing people. There's no one really knew much about him because essentially no one survived.
Well, no one still does, I presume.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a mystery. He just disappeared. But he was some form. The theory is that he was some form of like Ravener, some type of Ravener,
which got left
which you can
behind.
definitely see in the model what was going on there, and like I say, still available. And I think it's just a cool story.
Yeah, that's quite cool.
Yeah, and yeah, that's the Red Terror. I really wish there was a book about him. I don't think there is, but I would definitely read it.
Well, that'd be a horror story, surely.
Yeah, definitely. And maybe games like Black Library are doing horror stories. Maybe they should do one about the Red Terror. Yeah, so we've done our characters. So if someone wanted to get into Tyranids, like Tom, you said you wanted to play Tyranids now. How would you get into Tyranids, do you think?
Wow. I'd probably pick up the book, definitely, because I know nothing about them, really, still. I mean, I know, obviously, what we've talked about here, but from an army point of view, I think obviously the Codex and... which is their Psychic Awakening book?
I was thinking this. It's the one with Blood Angels. So let me have a quick look.
I can't remember the name of it.
On the website.
Which is...
quickly.
Is it something to do with Bull? Prophecy of...
Devastation.
Devastation. It is the Devastation. Of course it is. I spoke about that. I forgot it was actually...
Blood of Bull.
Blood of Bull. Yeah, that's what I think. Yep. Okay, yeah, fine. I'll pick up those two, obviously, because that gives you a good insight into what your capabilities of your army are going to be. You know, you go through, because especially with I think the Psychic Awakening book is pretty much a given for most armies now, because it gives an extra level of tactical stuff with it. And then I did have a look. I just need to refresh my memory. Cause I actually had it up here, but I've unfortunately closed it down.
They haven't got much model range.
No.
Like starting thing. They've got the starter collecting box, which by look of it, you get a gaunts.
Yeah.
You get a Trigon, and you get a Gene Stealer Bogey. What the Gene Stealer guy is called?
Broodlord.
Broodlord, that's the one.
Yeah. I've just seen the Red Terror. I've just seen the Red Terror model, by the way. Oh god!
Hey! I didn't say he's not the best model in the world, but I don't know. I quite like him. There's something about him I like.
No. He looks like he's a Trigon Prime who hasn't been having his protein shake.
Well, to be fair, he's only eating civilians.
Yeah, exactly.
And once again, maybe sorry, going back to the Red Terror. Maybe he knows what happens to him, like in a hive fleet, what happens when they win. And he's like, why would I want to do that? Why would I want to be squished to something? I've just killed like 1,000 civilians by myself. I'm a legend.
And going back to obviously the collection point of view, I don't think I'd start with that set actually.
No.
I mean, I'd like the Trigon in there. That'd be awesome. But I'm not sure about the Broodlord or the Gene Stealers, because I think that's not how I'd want to play personally. I mean, obviously, if you like Gene Stealers, are they Gene Stealers? Yeah, Gene Stealers, aren't they in that one?
Yeah,
they are. Of course they are. Because I think I'd rather start with some of the smaller stuff, even smaller than that, like Hormagaunts and Termagaunts. I think personally.
Yeah.
And as you said, maybe a Tervagon. That's just that's a personal preference thing. I mean, obviously, if you like those models, it's always going to be a good place to start. But I just feel that it's a weird start collecting set actually.
It's pretty bad actually. Like I've looked into this as well, and it's like the Gene Stealer model range, for instance. Like if you want to do Gene Stealers, which I think a lot of people, if you're doing this, you
of course,
tend to do Gene Stealers. Like you've got a lot of unique Gene Stealer models, but it looks like they've all discontinued. Like you'd have them in the Space Hulk box set. You'd have and you'd have them in the what's the one where Gene Stealer Colts were first brought into the game with Deathwatch something.
The Overwatch.
Yeah, they had some unique models there, but they've not got any. And the box set, there's no gaunt boxes. It's just oof. I mean, they do tend to do like a Gene Stealer box when it comes to Christmas. Which done the last couple of years, but unless you want to wait till Christmas.
I'll tell you what else is the Lictamol needs updating desperately.
Yeah,
and
so
even the Biovore as well.
Oh, the Biovore looks horrible, doesn't it?
It's just the head on it looks wrong.
I mean,
it looks like an angry toad.
Yeah, Red Terror is clearly the best model there, to be fair. But I think, to be fair, if I was to collect Tyranids, I would probably just go on eBay and start looking for cheap models.
Yeah, that's probably not a bad shout, to be fair. I think
because it's one of those armies where you want loads, you want swarms of things, and to buy swarms of gaunts. I mean, how much is a pack of gaunts off?
A pack of gaunts. £22 for. Well, actually, is that going to be a 10 box or a 12 box? Let's see, a 12. So you get 12 for £22. That's £2 a model, basically, isn't it? So
Yeah.
a little bit more,
Yeah.
give or
I
take.
don't normally criticize the cost of models because essentially it's a luxury item still, isn't
Of course.
it? But when you're doing it,
But you can always go value for money. Value for money is a very different thing.
You want a
Yeah.
swarm of these guys, don't you?
It's like when you get
kind of
Orc Boys. If you want an Orc army, you start. I started on eBay along with getting some stuff from my friend because it was a better way of generating that number of things.
So
And if
second-hand models, ideal for Tyranids.
Yeah.
If you want to have some big swarms, and then you can get big centerpieces as you go. Like the actual model range is pretty large for Tyranids.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they've got a lot of dated models in there as well.
A lot of the new bigger ones, new ones are some of the bigger ones that have come out, like the Horospex. Toxicrene's a new one, isn't it, as well? And some other. But all the it's weird because I must have actually most of the older stuff is actually the smaller stuff by the looks of it. So, yeah, I don't know. I think if I was to pay £22 for a Hormagaunt brood, for instance, I think I'd feel a bit hard done by.
Yeah.
Because it's a very basic. It's a very basic model, and they're really small as well. You're not getting a lot of plastic for that money.
No. And that's nowhere near enough for a squad. So you're obviously going straight away to buy a few boxes of them.
Yeah.
And that quickly mount up.
Yeah.
So maybe you got warriors as well.
Supplement it with eBay or second-hand purchases.
You don't have to do it all eBay, and you don't have to do it all games.
Well, you probably won't be able to. I mean, it's just there'll be a limit, but at the end of the day, definitely start off with that. I think I wouldn't dive straight in, and check what you want. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So they've got a fair few models and Forge World as well. So they've got a lot of stuff there, and it's a fair few unique models as well.
Yeah.
So I think, Tom, you've obviously enjoyed doing this.
You've
enjoyed the idea of a Tyranid army.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, it's one of those armies that before we had this particular thing, I probably wouldn't have. I like playing against it, but I wouldn't have ever thought maybe I could potentially collect it. But I think actually maybe in the future, once I've got some other projects out of the way. You know me. I pick stuff up now and then, and I like to have a wide range of stuff. I mean, I don't know the rules for any of it, but I love.
Maybe we should do Tyranids and I'll do Genestealer Cult.
Oh, there you go. That'd be awesome. Army. We could do that. Yeah.
Yeah. But hopefully people will watch this all the way to the end and see that might be a future on the channel.
Yeah. We could maybe work on it together in some way to make sure it sort of links together and have a little story behind it. It'd be quite cool.
Exactly. Anyway, guys, I hope you, boys and girls, sorry, I hope you've all enjoyed watching this video. We've definitely enjoyed doing some research, and hopefully we haven't slaughtered the lore too much. But if you want us to cover a faction of your choosing next time, put a comment below, and we will definitely consider it. We may even do it. Who knows?
At the moment, the quicker you comment, the quicker it might happen, because at the moment we're getting so many equal comments, obviously, lots of suggestions, that normally the first one wins, and that was the case in this time. So
yeah. So well done, Gavin, for suggesting it. Right, so this is Dom and
Tom
from Backtoe Studios. Thank you very much for watching. Take care, and hopefully we'll see you soon.
Indeed.
Toodaloo!
Bye!